Hal Sparks radio program mega worldwide.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass.
Hal Sparks, actor, comedian, and multimedia personality.
And I'm all out of bubblegum.
Hal Sparks.
All right, let's do this.
Okay, all right, okay. This is one of those days. Now, I'm going to try and not gloat too much. Johnny Million, welcome to the show, by the way. How are you this fine day?
I'm good. Missed you last week.
I missed you too. Absolutely. Of course, you will have to work in the salt mines an extra 2 days to make up for that lost time.
Looking forward to it. That might be why I did it.
That's right, because you're the only person who says yes, please, when I rub salt in their wounds. It's weird. Most people, But hey, look, you asked for it in your union contract, and I'm here to deliver.
That's right.
So I think you've been regularly off. Your diet of the news is not drinking from the fire hose like mine is. And yesterday, while I was doing my live stream, I was dipping into the usual because the Republicans are trying to, they're so trying to crowbar this Hunter Biden tax thing into, dear God, Joe Biden has sold out the entire country. Never mind the fact that their guy was caught on tape saying, I know these documents are classified, but I kept them anyways. Never mind that. The important thing is that these Second Amendment purists think that Hunter Biden saying he doesn't use drugs when he was using drugs on a form to get a gun would be wholly unnecessary if it was one of them. They don't even think that form should exist.
Right.
Much less, that if it was anybody else, they'd go, look, he's got the right to own a gun. Just because you're high on crack doesn't mean you don't fear for your life. Anyways, it's like they've been hammering that away. And so we were diving into their sort of next chapter, because every time you turn around, there's another, oh my God, this is it. The Durham report was the biggest lump of excrement in the punch bowl, I think, for them lately, because it's been a drip and drab kind of a thing with their bad news around this. But when they were like, the Durham report's going to nail it. Oh my God. And Trump was at his rallies going, where's Durham? Where's the Durham report? And then it comes out and it's basically like the conclusions of this 400-page report was that the FBI shouldn't have opened a full investigation. They should have opened a preliminary investigation before they opened a full investigation. Doesn't doubt any of the materials in it. It doesn't say any of the evidence is fraudulent, fake, or not true. Doesn't say any of the assertions that the FBI came to or any of the convictions they got were wrong. Nope, just the steps. I'm honest to God, it was like a Bruce McCullough character from Kids in the Hall going, and then I built a shelf out of pork rinds, and it's just standing there telling you how to do your job over your shoulder. So, that they have been hammering this for a while, and then of course this Comer thing, which is like it's kind of like most sequels. It was like a sequel to the Durham report, but it was just lame, and it was sort of. You're promised a new story, and they really just rework the origin story to try and massage it for the current appetite. Right. So pretty hilarious across the board, the fail. So we were looking at people like Glenn Beck and Dinesh D'Souza and the usual gang of idiots who were flipping out about it. And then my lovely chat room who are with us today and who are amazing beyond measure were like, Hal, Russia is happening right now. Because, I'm caught up in what I'm doing. And sure enough, because yours truly follows a bunch of pro-Ukraine and pro-Russia Telegram channels where all the lunacy is, I jumped right in there and we started looking at this stuff as it was unfolding. So let me catch everybody up if you're not aware. There has been an ongoing fight between Yevgeny Prigozhin, the head, and Philip Ittner will be joining us in the second hour, and he'll have even more insight into this as it goes, because it is literally unfolding as we speak. Yevgeny Prigozhin has been in this tit-for-tat fight with the Ministry of Defense, the Russian Ministry of Defense. Prigozhin runs the Wagner group, named after Hitler's favorite composer. Just in case you are under the impression that these might be the good guys in this. There are no good guys. This is when you find yourself on a Florida beach and an alligator is slowly making its way towards you. You are laying down, and you are trying to figure out a way to get away without moving too quickly, but you have to get on your feet, and it can outrun you, so you're just slowly kind of figuring out it. And a panther attacks it, and the panther and the alligator are tearing each other to pieces, and you're like, you know what, I'm just gonna walk. I'm just gonna go this way. This no longer involves me. Right.
And
It's
if
that
one of
kind
them
of thing.
wins and you're still around, that's not awesome.
That's right, exactly. Whichever one wins, you don't want to be standing there eating a hot dog. So and there's a reason I brought up hot dogs. It'll be in a minute. So Prigozhin runs the Wagner Group. It's a paramilitary group. It is a mercenary group. They are paid separately from by the Russian government. They have been involved in horrible atrocities throughout the world. Namely, they're in Africa. They are hired by some of the more disgusting regimes through, sort of on loan from Vladimir Putin. There are stories of them cutting open the bellies of pregnant women and eviscerating people as warnings that this is old school, putting people on stakes kind of stuff outside of a city, letting them bleed out alive as a warning to anybody who might try to cross these guys. All right. And when they say the white soldiers in areas of Chad and Sudan and a myriad of hotspots across Africa, what they're talking about is the Wagner guys, specifically, when they're talking about horrible things that are being done. So the Wagner group is not the good guys. You might cheer for them to be successful in this to a certain point, but it's not because they are decent in any way or they are finally waking up to how awful Putin's war is. So nobody get under do not carry that illusion around at all. So, Yevgeny Prigozhin was a hot dog salesman in St. Petersburg, literally. He started from that. He was very successful selling hot dogs. He formed his own catering company. He, at one point, got a job being, quote unquote, Putin's chef because he opened some fancy restaurants and Putin liked to eat there. He liked his hot dogs medium rare, and they were perfect. And he liked his filet mignon hot dog, and he would go to these restaurants and that they became close. So he, all of a sudden, around 2014-ish, Prigozhin gets this contract to form this group with money from, more than likely, Russian money that Putin had been siphoning off. Remember, Vladimir Putin is a guy who makes $140,000 US in, as the president of Russia, and he's worth $200 billion. I'm just saying, there might be a second set of books. Anyways, so these two guys, thick as thieves for a very long time. During the war, since this all started, the Prigozhin and this guy Shoigu, who's the head of the Ministry of Defense, he's kind of running the war for them. He's a bit dopey and not the most qualified guy in the world. I know, looking at how well they've been doing, you may go, come on. No, it's true. And in this process, and by the way, hi chat room, welcome, and like, subscribe, give a thumbs up, support the show if you're out there on the interwebs at infotainmentwar.com, wars.com. So, so Shoigu and Prigozhin start having sort of a war of words that escalates into a war of actual bloodshed. And there have been small, firefights, and they've written them off as like drunken Russian soldiers or drunken Wagner guys or drunken prison conscripts that the Russians have hoisted onto Wagner and said, train these guys up and send them to the front line. That's been part of the job of the Wagner group as well. So, and a bunch of those guys, after they finished their tour with the Wagner group didn't want to keep them. They don't want those inmates as part of their regular order group. So they just sent them back to Russia, and those people have been on killing sprees. It's shocking that, mass murderers let out of jail to be turned loose on the Ukrainians, when sent back to Russia, keep killing, because it's what they do. It's not so much the target, it's the activity. It's like whittling. So anyways, the mercenary group and the Ministry of Defense, I've been at loggerheads for a while, and it was all kind of if you'll recall, over the last year, it's been ebbing and flowing. There's been these dust ups where, oh my God, what did he say? He's standing in front of Prigozhin was standing in front of a line of dead Wagner fighters, the real ones, not the conscripts, the ones that he trained up himself. And these were guys he spent good money on, by God. And they're all laying there dead, and he in the dark, and he's yelling at Shoigu on camera that was released on social media, on Russian social media, on VK and on their Telegram channels, screaming that you're responsible for my dead guys because they didn't have the ammo, and therefore they ran out and they just were, at that point, just target practice. And there was that part alone, for a lot of people, should have been the moment where he got killed. Anybody else would have been pushed out of a third-story window in Russia for that stuff right away. And yet it kept on, and then because they needed him. That's quite frankly, it had a lot to do with Bakhmut. They needed him for Bakhmut, and so interestingly enough, he sort of called their bluff, and he said, "We took Bakhmut, we got it, it's all done, we have the whole city. Now we're leaving." And so they pulled back, and they were like, "We're going to go fight elsewhere, if here at all. We're building up contracts in Africa and other places. We're for hire. So we did our job. You paid us to take Bakhmut. We took Bakhmut." He stood there with a flag and said, "Look, it's taken. See that? See that rubble behind us? Consider that taken." And then he bugged out. Since then, there have been these reports regularly throughout the war of Russians shooting Russian soldiers who are retreating. It seems to me that the Ministry of Defense bombing the Wagnerites is sort of a version of that. So 2 days ago, one of the big Wagner camps was hit with a missile strike from the rear. Was definitely the source of it was from the Russian side.
You could say it's a back door, but I call it a smart door.
Now, when that happened, the number that we've kind of settled on, it was watery at first, but about 2,000 Wagner mercs were killed in that initial missile strike. And then there was follow-up gunfire and artillery strike, which I've only seen directly from Prigozhin and those guys, and from people around the Russian soldiers that they've talked to, because they kept firing. It wasn't just, oops, we accidentally hit you with a missile. They followed on this. The idea was to wipe everybody there out, and they didn't do it. Effectively, they swung and they missed. When we come back, Chapter 2, Wagner turns around and heads for Russia. We'll be back right after this. It's the Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide, now with 100% more Johnny Million.
Welcome back to the Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Okay, Chapter 2. So we're catching you up on what actually happened in Russia overnight, in that after the dust up between the Ministry of Defense and the Wagner group reached a crescendo with the Ministry of Defense bombing, firing a missile at, and then artillery strikes and machine gun fire. Apparently the Wagnerites went, hey, maybe they're doing this on purpose. And they got really mad. And then they turned around, 25,000 strong, allegedly, with another 25,000 already in Russia, allegedly. We'll see. Mm-hmm. And they headed across the Russian border through a checkpoint like butter, apparently where they only had some mild firing. The only reason the border guards fired on the Wagnerites when they were coming is because they thought they were Ukrainians. Then they stopped.
Oh, no.
And then welcomed them. Once they identified. Oh, indeed. Then they crossed. Yeah, the Boston Brian's in our chat room. Hi, Boston Brian from Midas Touch, and the videos of this. The videos of that stuff are crazy. So, then they cross over. They enter into Russia. Apparently, according to Prigozhin, hugs and kisses all around at the border crossings wherever they've gone through. They get to Rostov-on-Don, which is the city where supposedly Shoigu is hiding, or lives, or has a house, or is He's not in Moscow. He's supposed to be down there. So they head straight for that dude's house. And with all that stuff about like the Ukrainian Russian sympathy troops fighting in Belgorod and going in there and, doing a little dust up and then getting out, the bug out that happened a few weeks ago. Mm-hmm. Apparently it took about a few hundred Wagnerites to take Rostov-on-Don, the city of 1.1 million people, including surrounding the military installation there. There's this big kind of like, think of it as like a Pentagon satellite office building in Rostov-on-Don, because there's also a military base that was on fire. But the building itself, the administrative building, they surrounded it with tanks and guns, and apparently just took it over. And video came out after sunrise there, after the sun had come up, of Prigozhin walking around glad-handing with all the guys who work in that building, or at least the ones that lived or the ones that didn't bug out. Yeah. And I guess that's the hard part to tell, which is holy smokes. So there's the next, this message comes out. The civil war is on. Prigozhin is saying that's it. This is happening now. It is a civil war. And they have argued, and it turns out to be the case in some areas, that the I think it was the 22nd Special Forces group of Russian Special Forces is on the side of the Wagnerites now. They have joined with them, which doesn't sound good, I don't think. Like, that would sound, that wholly a negative if you were in the Kremlin. Yeah. And the pathway that they have argued, and this has been going on for the last 12 hours, is they go into Rostov-on-Don, they go, and then they're headed to Moscow through a place called Voronezh, I think it's called. I'm going to butcher the name because what the heck. And I can't open I got to put this on the other screen when I'm live streaming because I don't want to stumble on something that's fairly awful. But the Russians had decided they're definitely coming. It's on its way, and they have to go through. I'll just call it Voronezh until I find a different way to pronounce it. We're going to blockade the road there with these giant. It looks like garbage trucks. These orange garbage trucks, and they did about 3 deep, like garbage trucks 3 deep, to block the road, and the Wagnerites blasted right through it. It slowed them down about 10 seconds. Now I'm about to show on our screen at infotainmentwars.com and at twitch.tv/HalSparks. This is a train station I'm showing online outside of the station. Yeah, this is the station in Rostov-on-Don. Citizens are leaving the town because they are worried that Russian forces are going to be ordered to come in and start fighting the Wagnerites who have taken over that building, and therefore they are leaving. The interesting thing, though, is that on their way out of town, they are walking up to soldiers from the Wagner group and thanking them for doing this. They are glad-handing with them.
This is so confusing.
Yeah, so imagine how Putin feels right now. Everything was going so well. So this, they are halfway to Moscow right now. They entered Russia last night around 2 a.m. And they are their time. And they are halfway to Moscow right now. Which, I mean, the pucker factor in the Kremlin right now has got to be just off the charts. Wagner has allegedly shot down 3 Russian helicopters that were firing on them. So I'm going to guess a soft negotiation after the fact is going to be a bit difficult. I don't rule it out because gangster to gangster, I'm sure that to some degree, Putin's impressed. That said, and we'll probably have to do this after we go to break, Putin did finally, after not saying anything, Putin finally came out and made a statement this morning. And while he was making that statement, Russian, I guess, military and I guess state construction crews were just destroying roads. They were trenching highways, literally destroying their own roads on their in the middle, just creating giant 6-foot by 8-foot trenches in their own highways because the trucks didn't work. I'm showing that online as well right now. That is not, strictly speaking, I think, how Vladimir Putin thought this would be going a year and a half ago when they started this ridiculousness. Now, after we come back, we'll talk a little bit about Putin's statement, but also there's
supposed to just be like 2-3 days, right?
Yeah, so it's 3 days. That's the joke that's going around. It was supposed to be 3 days to Kiev, and now it looks like less than 3 days to Moscow at this point for the Wagnerites. That said, the Wagnerites having access to nuclear weapons is insane. Now, no one will order them, will fire them on orders from the Wagnerites anytime soon. So the United States and all of our allies will be, it'll just be malware time, but we'll talk about a little bit of that on the other side. But the messaging coming out of the Kremlin is less than believable, and the tankies are having a really rough time. Phil and I are going to have a hard time, not just popcorn and in his case champagning our way through the misery that is the people who have been supporting Russia this whole time and going, they're going to win. There's no way the Ukrainians could win. There's no way. And meanwhile, today, Russia is destroying its own roads to keep its own mercenaries from taking its own capital. Wow. We'll be back right after this. It's the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Attention, stop what you're doing. Because we're coming back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Oh my God!
They went a little crazy with it, and I appreciate it.
Now let's get back with Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
So lots of people, throwing their 2 cents into this, sort of Monday morning quarterbacking this stuff, especially on the tanky side. And if you don't know what a tanky is, if you think back to the easiest example I can give is that in the Tiananmen Square massacre, these people were on the side of the tank, that they are so committed to their support of
Team Tank.
Yeah, Team Tank, right. Against these upstart individuals who think democracy is a good thing or think you should have a say. So, by the way, Anton Gerashenko is Gerashenko_EN, which I think is his English account, is one of the other sources like on Twitter where people can go and see some of the stuff. And one of the, most recent thing, there's tons of stuff. But according to The Guardian right now, Wagner groups may reach Moscow by tonight. And because they are blazing a trail and nothing is stopping them. Last night, the tankies that I was watching online flipping out about this, who, by the way, all thought this was a psyop and was like video created on Midjourney, or like AI video.
That doesn't take you very far, just denying reality.
Nope. Yeah, it's not it's not a long-term strategy, certainly, because it will
definitely it might help you get to sleep that night.
It might help you get out the door, right? Like, no, that's all fake. That's all fake, whatever. And then you go, taxi, and that's it. That's how well, right? But currently, outside, there is a plan apparently in Moscow that has been a part of, I'm sure since the Cold War or previous, who knows? That it's called, like, it sounds so Thundercats, but it's like fortress mode where they have, it's the fort,
Thundercats.
Yeah. And apparently Moscow is under like under a fortress alert or whatever it's called, whatever the Russian second word is. But the idea is that we're going to turn Moscow into a fortress. The whole city will be all the police stations and all military checkpoints will be aligned and working perfectly so as to create, as you will, a wall with a moat and alligators and I don't know, knights in shining armor standing outside and people firing arrows. Anyways, just embarrassingly lame, as it's something you have to say. And if it doesn't work, it's even worse. Like, there's always a problem with naming stuff that, you know what I mean? It's like naming your battle plan Operation Mission Accomplished. You know what I mean? Like,
it hits a little too close to home. Huh?
It does. It kind of does. Well, technically speaking, Iraq has had elections, and Saddam Hussein is no longer there. So Operation Iraqi Freedom, as a bumpy road as it might be, they're not
eventually, yeah.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, at least you had an out in that regard. So let's see. 43 minutes ago, I guess one time wasn't enough. Apparently, the second Russian presidential aircraft, Air Ruska 2, has left Moscow and is also headed towards St. Petersburg. There are only two planes in which Putin is a passenger on. The first one and the second one, and both of them have left town. And yet Peskov is still saying, no, he's still, Putin is still here. He's in the gym. He's busy bench pressing 300 pounds of bear meat stuck on a spear that was taken from the side of Jesus Christ. So the ongoing part, and by the way, I have no doubt that when Phil joins us at the top of the next hour, this will be, it will be very difficult for us to get a word in edgeways. I will say this. Things are so bad in Russia. They're so bad that Steven Seagal is trending on Twitter. That's how bad it. That's how you know it's bad.
I do not understand the correlation, but I'm here for it.
He's a Russian citizen now. He moved to Russia. He considers himself a friend of Putin. He defends. He doesn't speak a word of Russian though. Oh boy, that's the thing. Here's one of Hal's personal tips. If you're going to move to an authoritarian country where they, on the regular, spray radioactive waste and poison in people's faces and shove people out windows whenever they get tired of them or they're no good, or they don't like the cut of their jib anymore, I would suggest learning the language, because at the very least, you'd understand at least the whisper campaign around you. How stupid. And I know people like this in China too, who live and work there, don't speak a word of Chinese except, xie xie and zaitian. Thank you and goodbye, which is when they ship you off to a re-education camp. Yeah, right. That's the last thing you're going to, it's what everybody's going to be saying to you. Oy. So yeah, Steven Seagal. And if you ever want a good time, go look up some of the video of him doing his kind of glad-handing videos inside of Russia, where he's the one of him eating a carrot is particularly hilarious.
Oh, that is amazing.
Yes,
I'm just a fan of if you go to YouTube and look up Steven Seagal running.
Oh, that's not good. Yeah. Everybody needs to get off Tom Cruise's back, because Tom Cruise running is just the fact that he runs. He runs perfectly well, though. He's a good runner. He's rock solid. I don't know what Steven Seagal is doing.
Hard. He's got those little bitty legs. They're just pumping.
Yep. And yeah. So this is.
You're like a foot taller than him, Hal.
I am.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. I'm 3 inches taller than him. 4 inches taller than him. Yeah. To be fair to the guy. In the Voronezh region, where the Russians are very concerned that the Wagnerites are getting through, it should come as no surprise that according to Baza and the human beings that are on that road who live around that area, Russian Air Force struck civilian vehicles trying to fire on the Wagnerites. Now, again, the Wagner group is using a mix of military and civilian vehicles because they just picked up whatever they could in Ukraine and rode through on it. So if you look at the group when they crossed into Russia, when they were there were only 2 videos that I could find that showed the Wagner column coming into Russia, into Rostov-on-Don, and there was mostly these military transport vehicles, some trucks with tanks on them, which was pretty scary, I guess, for the locals to see them coming this way, and then a few, SUVs, white SUVs with like Russian flags on them, because they are flying the Wagner group is flying the Russian flag while they're moving, because they're Russians. They believe they're patriots. Like, welcome to Trump world. Yeah. This is just, it's insane. And like I said, as an ongoing aspect of this, I'm going to see if I wanted to find also to show on the live stream the video of people walking up and saying, thank you, just don't start shooting, we're with you, leave us alone, of the Wagnerites. Like the people on the street coming up to the Wagnerites and going, we hate this, we don't want this war, we never wanted it, we can't say anything because we're going, they'll kill us or they'll throw us in jail. Now, Kadyrov is the other aspect of this. This is where it gets ugly. So Kadyrov's group, the Kadyrovites or what have you, there has been there's been a lot of fighting between the Russians and the Kadyrovites and the Wagner group and the Wagner group and the Kadyrovites, and they've been punching each other. I mean, they're largely all drunk, except for, I guess, the Kadyrovites. They're Muslims, so they don't drink. So they've been sober when they've been murdering their fellow Russians, if they're even that, because they're from Chechnya. But whatever. Anyways, the big question right now is, if Putin calls the Kadyrovites calls Kadyrov's people in to fight the Prigozhin crowd, will they do it? And right now, word on the street is it's a coin flip. That they very well may be more angry with the Ministry of Defense than they are with Prigozhin and his crowd. And all they need is one phone call going, hey, guess what? Chechnya is all yours. Then it's done. If Prigozhin and the Wagnerites say, if we're successful in deposing Putin, we're going to give Chechnya back to the Chechnyans. That in and of itself, it would end this. And I can't think of any particular reason why Prigozhin's crowd would even care. Most Russians don't. As a matter of fact, the bloodbath that was the Chechen War was one of the things that almost made Putin lose his job at one point. This is when the turn can happen so easily, that it was never like the illusion that this was something that the Russian people wanted, and this is it's an existential threat that the Russians needed to do, and NATO. Now, which brings me to, and we got to take a break, but when we come back, a lot of this started with...
Phil says he's ready, if he can jump in early.
Oh, let's bring in Phil. I'll bring in Phil early. Yeah, Phil, let's take a break, and we'll bring in Phil in the next part, because the video that Prigozhin put out that explained how the war started, that goes against the entire NATO expansion nonsense coming from the Kremlin and all of its suck-ups in the tanky world, about we had to do this because NATO was coming, and they kept expanding and expanding. And here comes the head of the Wagner group, the only successful fighting force over there, saying that's not at all what was happening. This was a cash grab. We'll be back right after this. It's House Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk.